Every conversation holds the power to connect, inspire, and influence, but most of us freeze, stumble, or run out of words at the worst possible moments. Imagine walking into any room, joining any discussion, and speaking with confidence, clarity, and effortless flow. No scripts, no hesitation, no awkward pauses. This skill isn't reserved for extroverts or trained speakers. It's a discipline you can cultivate, a mindset and practice that transform ordinary interactions into meaningful dialogue. By learning to harness observation, curiosity, and mental frameworks, you can generate ideas on the spot and keep conversations alive, compelling, and endlessly engaging. Number 1. End awkward silences with simple systems. Silence appears first as a small empty room between words. It is the short, sharp pause after a sentence that feels like a missing brick in a wall. The body tightens, the eyes search for a handhold, the mind offers nothing, and suddenly the moment stretches and becomes louder than any sentence could be. This chapter is an invitation to build simple, reliable systems that transform that empty room into a place of steady light. Systems are small rituals, mental templates, and habits that do the heavy lifting when the immediate impulse to speak deserts you. They are the practiced pathways that replace panic with presence. Start with the central truth. Most awkward silences are not a sign of failure. They are an opportunity. The mind often freezes because it attempts to produce something perfect on the spot. Perfection is slow. A system is fast. A system is decent, immediate, and repeatable. It keeps conversation moving while preserving authenticity. Adopt a handful of templates that fit any context: work, friendship, dates, panels, and use them until they are second nature. First practical tool: observation, question. Notice one concrete thing in the environment and convert it into a gentle question. The observation can be visual, auditory, or emotional. The texture of sunlight on the table, the hum of a coffee grinder, a pause between breaths. Say something simple like, "That light makes the room feel calm." What do you find calming about places like this? The formula is 2 parts: a brief observation, one linking word, because, which, that, and an open question. This shifts attention from performance to curiosity. It grounds the speaker in the present moment and invites the other person to carry the thread. Second tool: the 3-layer follow-up. When someone says anything, no matter how small, respond with 3 elements: reflect, probe, add. Reflect means echo the feeling or fact. You enjoyed that project. Probe means ask one clarifying or deepening question. What part surprised you most? Add means contribute a short personal or factual line that connects but does not dominate. I remember feeling the same way when I faced a tight deadline. It made the results sharper. This sequence creates rhythm. It turns a single sentence into a small conversation. It is not a script. It is a pattern that creates natural flow. Third tool: the micro-story. People respond to story because it compresses sensory detail and meaning. Keep 3 micro-stories ready, each about 30 to 90 seconds, that are true, vivid, and teach something small. One could be about a surprising mistake, another about a small victory, another about a moment of learning. The micro-story needs 3 parts: setting, one sensory detail, the pivot, a small problem or surprise, and the result, what changed or what was learned. Practice them until they are comfortable to tell. Micro-stories are not performances. They are short maps that guide listeners into your experience and invite them to share theirs. Fourth tool: the because principle. Humans accept explanations far more readily than statements. Add a brief reason to nearly every comment. I liked that idea because it solved the timing problem, or I paused because I wanted to make sure I understood you. The word because signals thoughtfulness and invites elaboration. It also buys time and signals cognitive engagement without requiring a large production of new material. Fifth tool, default question sets. Prepare 3 lists in your phone or notes app. 1 for casual settings, 1 for professional settings, 1 for intimate settings. Each list should contain 10 open-ended prompts that avoid yes/no answers. Examples: what's something you've seen recently that surprised you? How did you decide on that path? What small routine helps you get through a tough day? These lists are not crutches, they are scaffolding. When silence lands, a quick glance and a single prompt will move the moment forward. There is also a discipline to listening. Speaking systems fail when listening is passive. Active listening is a practice. Slow your breath, match small facial signals, paraphrase mentally, and keep your palms visible and relaxed. Small physical cues, the lean forward by 30 degrees, the nod, the soft intake of breath, communicate openness and often prompt more from the other person. Listening with intention fills silences because it creates a sense of safety. When people feel heard, they speak more freely. Make hearing an active habit. Silence does not always require filling. There is a stoic advantage to tolerance of quiet. Train the mind to hold small pauses without panic. A 2-second pause after someone finishes speaking gives weight to their words and allows your response to form more carefully. Breathe slowly into the diaphragm during those seconds. It both calms and extends presence. This approach reframes silence as a deliberate tool rather than an error. When silence is chosen, it becomes a signal of thoughtfulness. Practice turns systems into reflexes. Use a 40-day experiment for the next 40 days. Intentionally employ one of these systems every day in a conversation. Count small wins: when a micro-story sparked engagement, when a follow-up turned a bland answer into a memorable exchange. Keep a short log. Note the context, which tool was used, and what worked. Over time, the systems stop feeling external and become part of conversational muscle memory. A practical exercise deepens the work: the 3-minute mapping ritual. Each morning, spend 3 minutes writing 3 observations from the previous day. 1 sensory detail, 1 conversation line you remember, 1 question you wish you had asked. This trains attention and builds a reservoir of material. After 2 weeks, expand to 3 micro-stories. Place these notes in a small folder on the phone. When silence comes, scan the folder and pick 1 item. This makes retrieval immediate. It removes searching from the pressure cooker of the present moment. Another real-world tactic is to use constraints to foster creativity. Choose a conversational constraint for an evening. Only ask questions that begin with how or what, or limit yourself to sharing only stories under 2 minutes. Constraints convert the broad anxiety of what should I say into a narrow, solvable puzzle. People respond to clarity. They relax when your conversational rules are clear. There will be times when no system works and the silence persists. Respond to that with a simple, stoic framing. Acknowledge the silence and reframe the goal. A short phrase: "Quiet nights are rare. This feels calm," is honest and interrupts the creeping narrative that silence equals failure. If the setting allows, suggest an external activity. Shall we walk? Or would you like to hear a quick story? Physical movement, shared food, or a small task often dissolves the freeze better than words alone. Build conversational muscle outside social time. Practice micro-stories in the mirror. Record them and listen back. Time them. Trim the excess. Practice the observation question in public spaces by noting 2 details and asking someone about them: barista, fellow commuter, neighbor, without pressuring for depth. These mini exercises do 2 things. They convert the body's startle response into a practiced motion, and they populate your mental notebook with genuine detail that feeds later conversations. Measure progress by quality, not quantity. The goal is not to speak constantly, but to be reliably present and generative. Track the difference. Are conversations deeper? Do people return to talk more often? Does the frequency of awkward silence drop, or when it appears, does it resolve without anxiety? Those metrics are real and instructive. Journal one sentence each night about how present the conversations felt and which system was used. This keeps improvement visible and focused. Finally, the inner work supports the outward system. Cultivate a stillness practice, short daily meditation, a walk without devices, a 5-minute breathing exercise before an important meeting. Stoic discipline begins with self-mastery. When the inner climate is steady, the outer movement becomes effortless. Confidence in conversation is not performance. It is a state cultivated by repeated small acts, preparation, observation, restraint, and curiosity. Silence will still arrive. It is part of human rhythm. The difference is whether silence becomes a cliff or a bridge. Systems make it a bridge. They are small and repeatable. Observe, posture, reflect, probe, add, micro-stories, default question sets, the because principle, active listening, and short daily practices. These tools do not remove vulnerability, they hold it. They replace improvisation under pressure with practiced authenticity. When systems are in place, speech becomes an offering rather than an audition. Begin with one simple commitment for the next week. Select one system and use it in at least 3 conversations. Notice the sensations, the way the body relaxes when the template works, the slight lift in another's eyes when they are invited to expand. Keep the practice humble and persistent. Over time, the silence will lose its sting, and conversations will become steady work, built not on improvisation alone, but on a quiet, disciplined craft. Number 2. Build endless conversation from everyday moments. Everyday life is a treasure chest of conversation, but most people walk past it without noticing the gems. Ordinary moments, the way steam rises from a coffee cup, the rhythm of rain on a window, a sudden burst of laughter in a park, are rich with narrative and connection. They are not filler, they are the raw material for dialogue that is both genuine and captivating. Building endless conversation begins with a shift in attention, noticing the ordinary with extraordinary care. This practice transforms mundane observations into bridges for engagement, turning daily life into an inexhaustible source of material. The first step is developing acute awareness. People often skim the surface of life, moving from task to task, without pausing to see what is happening. Slow down. Watch the small gestures that make up human behavior. The flick of a hand, a subtle smile, the pause before someone speaks. Note the environment around you. The way shadows form under trees, the way sunlight glints off a window, the interplay of sound and silence. These are details that no one else may consciously recognize, and they are gifts in conversation. When you describe something with precision, you invite others into your sensory world, giving them a reference point to respond. The more detail you can observe and communicate, the more material you have to share. Next is framing observations into approachable commentary. It is not enough to notice, you must translate awareness into words. Simple descriptive phrases are powerful. The light in this cafe feels warmer today, or the city hums differently in the morning. Such statements are neutral, non-threatening, and naturally invite responses. They are the starting points for a two-way exchange, offering others a space to contribute their own perceptions. By framing observations this way, the conversation feels alive, co-created rather than performed. A crucial habit is linking observations to universal experiences. When someone hears a relatable reflection, they feel connected immediately. For example, noticing a stray dog wandering down a street can become, "That dog reminds me of the one I grew up with. Did you have pets growing up?" Here, the mundane transforms into the personal. Ordinary events become entry points into life stories, opinions, and emotions. The mind shifts from thinking, "What should I say?" to noticing, "How does this connect to shared human experience?" This mindset makes the well of conversation effectively endless because life itself is endlessly occurring. Everyday moments are also fertile ground for gentle humor. Humor is less about punchlines and more about observation. The slightly chaotic tangle of bags at a grocery store, the awkward positioning of people on a crowded train, or the over-enthusiastic display of an advertisement, these can be commented on lightly and playfully. Humor relaxes the other person and makes them more willing to engage. It can be subtle, even self-deprecating, and need not dominate the interaction. A small shared smile over a common detail often opens doors far more effectively than a complex story. Questions grounded in daily life are another key. Instead of generic prompts, anchor inquiries in something concrete happening around you. "That mural looks like it took a long time to paint. Have you seen street art that amazed you?" Or, "The aroma here is incredible. Do you cook often?" Open-ended questions rooted in immediate context do two things. They reduce pressure on your memory, since the moment itself provides the prompt, and they increase relevance, since the other person can respond directly to what they are experiencing. Everyday moments become both inspiration and scaffolding for dialogue. Narratives born from ordinary experience are exceptionally compelling when layered with reflection. A brief observation can become a meditation on a broader idea. Noticing a fallen leaf, for example, can lead to reflection on impermanence or resilience. Seeing that leaf tumble across the sidewalk reminds me how life moves even when we try to hold on. Do you ever feel that way? This approach combines the concrete and the philosophical, giving the conversation depth while remaining rooted in tangible detail. It allows for connection on multiple levels: sensory, emotional, and intellectual. Creating mental catalogues of ordinary inspiration is a discipline that compounds over time. Keep a running mental or even physical list of sights, sounds, phrases, and mini-stories. Train yourself to carry a mental notebook of observations that strike you as unique or thought-provoking. Over time, your mind becomes a storehouse of material that can be accessed almost effortlessly. You stop relying on improvisation under pressure. Instead, you draw from a curated well. This habit not only strengthens conversation, but also deepens perception of life itself. Ordinary experiences are no longer trivial, they are abundant and meaningful. The art of transition is also important. Use small details to pivot from observation to broader topics. If someone comments on the smell of coffee, it can segue naturally into morning routines, favorite beverages, or travel experiences related to coffee. If it rains, you might move from weather to memories of storms, holidays, or childhood experiences. Each ordinary moment is a door. Your awareness and subtle linking phrases become the key. The more fluid you become at connecting details, the more conversations can flow without effort. These transitions are invisible threads that make interaction seamless. Listening is the other half of the equation. Observing life is one skill. Listening to others' reflections is another. Often people share details of their day without realizing the conversational gold in them. Pay attention to fleeting mentions, the type of commute someone has, the flavor of lunch, the soundtrack of their morning. Each small detail can be expanded into an engaging question or story. Echoing their observations validates them and encourages elaboration. This reciprocal attention transforms two people sharing space into co-creators of an unfolding narrative. Conversation becomes dynamic, not forced. Practice cultivates both speed and creativity. Allocate it intentional exercises. Spend 1 hour in a public space noting 5 details to mention in conversation, or challenge yourself to turn 3 mundane observations into small anecdotes. By the end of the day, regular engagement hones instinct, so that noticing, framing, and linking occur naturally, even under social pressure. With practice, the mind begins to see potential dialogue in every interaction, and silence loses its intimidation. Finally, embrace the inevitability of unpredictability. Not every observation will spark conversation, and not every connection will land perfectly. The goal is continuous engagement, not flawless performance. Maintain curiosity, a calm presence, and a willingness to respond to what actually occurs rather than what you hope will happen. Life offers an unending supply of material. The discipline is to tune in and participate fully. Each moment carries potential, and your role is to notice, reflect, and invite participation. In doing so, the ordinary becomes extraordinary, and conversations become abundant. By training attention, framing observations, linking to shared human experience, practicing reflection, and curating a catalogue of everyday inspiration, a single day can yield enough conversation to fill weeks. Ordinary life becomes a laboratory, every environment a classroom, and every person a source of insight. The more habitual this practice becomes, the less fear or hesitation enters dialogue. Conversation ceases to be a challenge. It becomes an art supported by observation, curiosity, and intentionality. Every interaction offers proof that endless conversation is possible. It requires only awareness, creativity, and persistence. Observing the small details, transforming them into approachable statements, linking them to universal human experience, adding gentle humor, asking context-rooted questions, and reflecting philosophically when appropriate. All of this creates a reservoir that never runs dry. Everyday life itself provides an inexhaustible supply of material. The art is not in inventing content, but in noticing it, shaping it, and offering it thoughtfully. Through this practice, dialogue becomes a reflection of presence, awareness, and connection, making communication effortless, rich, and enduring. Number 3. Never freeze again in conversations. Freezing in a conversation is a natural reaction to pressure, uncertainty, or self-consciousness. It feels like the mind shuts down, the throat tightens, and the seconds stretch into minutes. The body instinctively recoils, waiting for safety, while the social moment feels like a test you're failing. The first step in never freezing again is to understand why it happens. It is not a flaw, but a survival reflex. The brain interprets potential social judgment as a threat, triggering hesitation and mental blankness. Recognizing this as a biological response rather than a personal failure is empowering. It transforms panic into something that can be observed, managed, and redirected. The second step is preparation, but not in the conventional sense of memorizing lines. Preparation is about building a mental toolkit that can be deployed flexibly. Create a collection of conversational anchors, short, reliable phrases or questions that can be used in multiple contexts. These anchors are not scripts, they are stabilizers. Examples include curiosity-based questions like, "What's been the most surprising part of your week?" or statements that invite elaboration, such as, "That's fascinating, tell me more about how that happened." Anchors are rehearsed enough to be comfortable but flexible enough to feel natural. They reduce cognitive load because you no longer need to invent content on the spot. A crucial skill in preventing freezes is managing inner dialogue. Panic often escalates when the mind tells a story of failure. "I'll say something stupid," or "everyone is judging me." Interrupting that narrative is essential. Practice reframing internal thoughts. Notice the anxiety, acknowledge it, and replace it with a neutral or constructive observation. For example, shift "I can't think of anything" to "I'm listening and noticing, and I have options." This simple cognitive switch allows the mind to move from paralysis to engagement. Thoughts are signals, not verdicts. Breath and posture are physical levers that influence mental state. The freeze response is partially fueled by tension and shallow breathing. By adopting a grounded posture, feet flat, shoulders relaxed, chest open, and taking slow, deliberate breaths, the body receives a message of safety and control. This physiological adjustment can instantly reduce the intensity of panic, giving the mind space to function. The body is a feedback system. When it relaxes, mental clarity follows. Small pauses with deep breaths can transform a freezing moment into a controlled moment of presence. Visualization is another potent tool. Before entering conversations, spend a few minutes imagining yourself engaging comfortably, responding fluidly, and recovering gracefully from minor missteps. Visualization trains the mind for the expected scenario, decreasing the element of surprise that triggers freezing. The more detailed the imagery, the sights, sounds, emotions, even the physical sensations, the more the mind internalizes it. Rehearsal in imagination is rehearsal in reality, because the brain does not entirely distinguish between vivid mental rehearsal and actual experience. This primes confidence and fluidity. Micro-recovery techniques are vital for when a freeze begins, despite preparation. Short, verbal fillers can buy time while maintaining authenticity. "That's an interesting point," or "I'd like to think about that for a moment." Paired with a slow breath, these phrases create a natural buffer without signaling panic. They allow the speaker to collect thoughts, pivot to a different angle, or engage the listener for clarification. Recovery is not about masking failure. It is about using the moment to regain composure. Another layer of prevention is cultivating curiosity as a default stance. When the focus shifts from performance to genuine interest in the other person, anxiety diminishes. Freezing often stems from self-centered pressure to impress or perform. Curiosity redirects attention outward, inviting engagement and reducing fear of judgment. Questions born from genuine interests, observations about their work, hobbies, or experiences, create natural openings for dialogue. The more the conversation becomes a collaborative exploration, the less the freeze has any leverage. Memory scaffolding enhances the ability to respond without hesitation. Keep mental notes of shared details, past interactions, and observable facts. Remember a person's recent stories, interests, or challenges. When silence threatens, these stored elements become instant material. They do not have to be rehearsed word for word. The mind only needs a reference point. For example, recalling that someone recently traveled can spark a question or story, giving continuity to the conversation and reducing pressure to invent something from nothing. Timing and pacing are subtle but critical. Rapid-fire responses can escalate anxiety, while overly long pauses can feel like a freeze. Learn to calibrate speed and rhythm. Short, thoughtful pauses signal reflection and confidence rather than hesitation. Speaking in measured intervals gives the mind space to process and frame responses. The flow of conversation is more important than volume or immediacy. Each carefully chosen pause can strengthen clarity and presence, transforming potential freezes into moments of deliberate engagement. Practicing small, controlled exposures is essential. Intentionally place yourself in conversations where stakes feel slightly uncomfortable and apply the techniques breathe, anchor phrases, curiosity, and reflective pauses. Start with low-pressure settings, small talk with a barista, casual chats with colleagues. then progressively increase complexity, networking events, presentations, or group discussions. Gradual exposure strengthens resilience, builds confidence, and trains the nervous system to remain steady under social stress. Each small success compounds, reducing fear and increasing competence. Resilience also comes from embracing imperfection. Freezing is not a moral failing. It is a signal that the nervous system is active. Accepting that missteps are inevitable removes additional pressure. When an error occurs, acknowledge it lightly and move forward. A brief smile, a comment like, "That came out differently than I intended," or redirecting to a new observation. The grace of acceptance transforms errors into opportunities for connection rather than triggers for shame. Attention to micro-expressions and social cues can prevent escalation of freezing. Noticing subtle changes in body language, tone, and facial expression provides insight into the emotional temperature of the exchange. Responding appropriately, leaning in, nodding, or pausing for emphasis creates alignment and reduces social tension. This attentiveness signals competence and presence, which in turn increases comfort and reduces the chance of freezing. Social awareness functions as both preventive measure and real-time corrective mechanism. Mental rehearsal of response strategies complements all these techniques. Have a short mental library of ways to respond to common conversation pivots, expressing agreement, shifting topic gently, or politely disagreeing. These mental templates are not rigid scripts. They are flexible guides. When a freeze looms, the brain can quickly select a pattern, reducing cognitive strain and allowing for immediate, confident engagement. Familiarity breeds fluidity, and fluidity reduces panic. Long-term resilience arises from consistent self-reflection. After interactions, review what worked, what felt awkward, and what tools were most effective. Journal insights and refine anchors, micro-recovery phrases, and observation habits. This ongoing feedback loop strengthens competence over time. Each reflection adds to the mental repository of strategies, making future interactions smoother and more controlled. Growth is incremental but cumulative, and mastery of presence is a product of persistent conscious practice. Finally, cultivating an inner stance of calm observation fortifies all strategies. Observe thoughts without being controlled by them. Maintain a steady awareness of both self and environment. Silence, pauses, and temporary uncertainty are tolerated rather than feared. A composed mind radiates confidence even if words are sparse initially. Freezing becomes rare because the mental framework has been reinforced by repeated practice, physiological regulation, curiosity, preparation, and reflection. Conversations transform from tests to shared explorations. The combination of awareness, preparation, breath regulation, visualization, curiosity, memory scaffolding, pacing, exposure, acceptance, social attunement, and reflective practice creates a robust system. Freezing ceases to be a threatening phenomenon. Each tool reinforces the other, producing resilience that is both practical and internalized. Engaging with others becomes an exercise in observation, responsiveness, and shared presence, rather than a battlefield of performance and anxiety. Mastery is built in the small moments, repeated consistently, until the mind and body respond naturally, gracefully, and without hesitation. Number 4. Turn curiosity into infinite talking points. Curiosity is the engine of conversation, the spark that turns ordinary interactions into meaningful exchanges. It is a mindset that transforms each encounter into a labyrinth of discovery, where every observation can lead to insight and every question opens new pathways. At its core, curiosity is not about interrogation or performance. It is about genuine interest in the world and in the people inhabiting it. The mind that embraces curiosity never exhausts its supply of talking points, because life itself provides an infinite array of phenomena, experiences, and perspectives waiting to be explored. The first step is cultivating an inquisitive frame of mind. Begin by noticing what naturally draws attention. It might be a unique expression on someone's face, an unexpected choice in clothing, or the rhythm of a voice. Rather than filing these observations as background, treat them as invitations to inquire. Ask yourself, why does this matter? What story is hidden here? What can I learn? This internal questioning primes the brain to seek connections, patterns, and meaning. As curiosity becomes habitual, almost any moment can become a source of conversation, turning ordinary settings into fertile grounds for dialogue. Turning curiosity into tangible talking points requires refining observation into articulation. A mere noticing, such as "that painting is bright," is a seed, not a conversation. Expand it by considering context and implication. The colors in that painting are so vibrant, I wonder what inspired the artist to choose this palette. By framing observations as speculative or reflective prompts, curiosity becomes actionable. The question invites response, transformation, and elaboration. It shifts dialogue from a mechanical exchange of words to a co-creative exploration of ideas. Curiosity thrives on specificity. Broad questions often produce vague responses, but precise inquiries grounded in observed detail encourage richer engagement. Instead of asking, "How was your day?" try, "What was the most unexpected moment you experienced today?" The specificity signals attentiveness and opens pathways for narrative. It demonstrates that you are not just seeking filler words, but genuinely invested in understanding the other person's experience. When applied consistently, this principle creates a pattern of discovery where conversation expands naturally, without force or pretense. Linking curiosity to personal experience amplifies its effect. When someone shares a detail, respond by connecting it to your own perspective or story while maintaining openness. For example, if a person mentions enjoying a new hiking trail, you might say, "That sounds invigorating. I remember finding a trail last month where the views shifted with every bend. What did you find most striking about this one?" This balance between curiosity-driven inquiry and personal reflection encourages reciprocity. The conversation becomes a dynamic exchange where talking points evolve organically, propelled by mutual interests. Another powerful strategy is curiosity about context rather than content alone. Beyond asking what someone did, inquire about why and how. The reasoning, the decision-making, the feelings associated with their choices. If someone discusses reading a book, the natural next question might be, what drew you to that story? How did it change your perspective? Focusing on motives and processes rather than surface events deepens conversation and reveals layers of insight. This approach converts seemingly mundane topics into rich explorations of thought, preference, and emotion. The practice of pattern recognition strengthens conversational curiosity. Observe recurring themes in behavior, speech, or environment. Someone who frequently mentions travel may have deeper insights about cultural perspectives, personal growth, or planning strategies. By identifying patterns, you can craft questions or reflections that resonate more deeply and sustain dialogue over multiple exchanges. It also demonstrates attentiveness and memory, which fosters trust and encourages the other person to share further. Curiosity, combined with pattern awareness, ensures conversations never stagnate because each layer opens doors to subsequent layers. Curiosity is amplified by emotional attunement. Notice not only what people say, but how they say it. The subtle shifts in tone, the pauses, the energy behind words. Emotions reveal meaning beyond factual content. A statement about work might seem mundane until you detect enthusiasm, frustration, or pride. By tuning into emotional undercurrents, questions can be targeted to explore experiences, beliefs, or aspirations. This alignment transforms curiosity into empathy, making interactions richer, more authentic, and infinitely extendable. Curiosity about the world beyond immediate observation also generates conversational wealth. Current events, cultural phenomena, scientific discoveries, or artistic trends serve as bridges to dialogue. Instead of reciting facts, approach these topics with inquisitiveness. I read about a community project that reshaped a local park. I wonder how initiatives like that change people's sense of belonging. By inviting reflection rather than delivering conclusions, curiosity becomes collaborative exploration. Every observation can thus sprout multiple talking points, each branching into new areas of inquiry. Daily rituals can reinforce a curiosity-driven mindset. Begin each morning noting 3 things that intrigue, surprise, or puzzle you. Carry these observations mentally and integrate them into conversations. Reflect on interactions at the end of the day. Which questions prompted the most depth? Which responses surprised or delighted? Over time, this habitual review trains the mind to identify conversation-worthy material continuously. Curiosity ceases to be a sporadic impulse and becomes a steady, reliable generator of dialogue. Silence, paradoxically, can deepen curiosity. Rather than rushing to fill gaps, use pauses to observe micro-expressions, gestures, and tone. Let a moment of quiet signal genuine interest. It encourages elaboration and often brings unanticipated insights. Silence is not emptiness. It is a space for curiosity to expand, for the speaker to contribute thoughts they might have initially withheld. When paired with attentive observation, it transforms potential conversational dead ends into springboards for new topics. The long-term cultivation of curiosity involves broadening personal horizons, reading widely, exploring unfamiliar environments, engaging in diverse experiences, and observing new forms of human expression increase the pool of insights you can bring to conversation. The more varied your encounters, the more nuanced your questions, reflections, and stories. Each novel experience becomes a seed for dialogue. Curiosity, when nurtured, multiplies exponentially. One question leads to another. One observation sparks a chain of stories. One reflection generates deeper insight. It is an infinite cycle fueled by edging with life itself. Accountability enhances application. Maintain a mental log of recent observations, questions, and responses that yielded meaningful exchange. Analyze which approaches led to extended discussion and which fell flat. This reflective practice transforms raw curiosity into strategic skill, ensuring that your conversational flow becomes increasingly resilient and adaptable. By continuously testing and refining techniques, curiosity becomes both natural and effective, rather than random or intermittent. Ultimately, curiosity is a mindset more than a method. It requires presence, attentiveness, and openness. The curiosity-driven speaker approaches conversation with humility, recognizing that every person is a source of insight and every encounter an opportunity for discovery. Talking points become endless, not because of prepared scripts, but because of the habit of noticing, questioning, and exploring. Life, in its infinite complexity, supplies an inexhaustible canvas. Curiosity is the brush that reveals patterns, connections, and stories hidden in plain sight. Through disciplined awareness, reflective inquiry, attentive observation, and persistent exploration, conversations become continuous streams of engagement. Curiosity transforms ordinary interactions into fertile grounds for dialogue that is meaningful, insightful, and adaptive. The mind trained in curiosity never exhausts its material because each person, each environment, and each experience contains layers waiting to be discovered. The practice of turning curiosity into conversation is not merely a social skill, it is a life habit that converts attentiveness into connection, observation into dialogue, and ordinary moments into endless talking points, ensuring communication remains dynamic, engaging, and profoundly resonant. Number 5. The mental framework for always speaking. Speaking with confidence and continuity is less about having endless facts memorized and more about cultivating a mental framework that sustains thought, attention, and articulation. The mind, when properly structured, can generate ideas, responses, and reflections almost automatically, reducing the fear of silence and the pressure to produce perfection. The foundation of this framework is not improvisation alone, it is a disciplined combination of awareness, categorization, reflection, and mental rehearsal, which together create a dynamic and reliable flow of communication. The first principle is compartmentalization. The mind functions best when information is organized into categories rather than left as a chaotic mass. Create mental containers for different types of conversational content: observations, anecdotes, questions, reflections, and facts. Each container can be drawn upon independently, allowing rapid access to appropriate material depending on context. This approach prevents overwhelm because it reduces the cognitive burden of scanning an undifferentiated memory. When a conversational moment arises, the brain can reach into the specific container that fits the situation, producing relevant and timely input. The second principle is associative linking. Thoughts and ideas are rarely linear. They are networks connected by meaning, similarity, or contrast. Strengthening the habit of linking concepts allows one idea to trigger another, creating a chain of dialogue rather than isolated statements. For example, noticing a person's watch might lead to a discussion about punctuality, which could pivot to time management strategies, which then naturally transitions to a story about a personal challenge overcome. This associative structure transforms a single observation into a cascade of topics, providing endless material without conscious strain. Mental scaffolding is the third component. Scaffolding refers to constructing mini-structures in the mind that support extended thinking. Begin with a simple premise, a fact, a question, or an observation, and gradually layer reflection, personal insight, and potential outcomes. This scaffolding can be internalized through practice, so when a conversational spark occurs, the mind instinctively expands it. Scaffolding reduces the fear of not knowing what to say next because the mental pathway is pre-built, allowing ideas to unfold logically and coherently. The fourth principle involves scenario rehearsal. Anticipate potential conversational contexts and mentally simulate responses. This does not require rote memorization. Instead, imagine likely trajectories, questions, and challenges. Running these mental simulations strengthens cognitive flexibility and confidence. By visualizing how ideas might evolve and testing responses in thought, the mind becomes accustomed to navigating uncertainty. When faced with a real interaction, this rehearsal reduces hesitation, enabling fluent, adaptable speech. Another crucial aspect of the mental framework is the prioritization of curiosity over performance. When the focus shifts from impressing others to understanding and exploring, the pressure to produce exact words diminishes. Curiosity acts as a natural driver of conversation, generating questions, reflections, and observations that are contextually appropriate. This internal attitude shifts the mind from reactive to generative mode, where dialogue is seen as an exchange of exploration rather than a test of skill. Attention management is also essential. Conversations are complex streams of verbal, non-verbal, and environmental information. The mind must be trained to observe cues, interpret meaning, and integrate these signals into ongoing dialogue. This requires conscious practice. Slow down the pace, notice tone, gestures, and expressions, and adjust responses accordingly. By training attention, the mental framework expands to accommodate multiple impulses simultaneously, allowing smoother, more coherent engagement. Attentive presence transforms scattered thoughts into connected ideas ready to articulate. Cognitive inventorying enhances the ability to always speak. Keep a running mental stock of facts, anecdotes, reflections, and questions. Periodically review this inventory to reinforce recall. The mind becomes a library of conversational elements that can be accessed without hesitation. The act of organizing and reinforcing these mental assets ensures that, even under stress, retrieval is nearly instantaneous. Over time, this inventory grows, not just in quantity but in depth, providing richer material for nuanced exchanges. Adaptive mental mapping complements this approach. Recognize the trajectory of dialogue and anticipate possible directions. Mentally map potential themes, connections, and topics that could arise. This foresight creates readiness, so when someone introduces a new idea, the mind can immediately align and respond with relevance. Adaptive mapping is less about predicting exact words and more about maintaining cognitive flexibility, ensuring that speech flows logically while remaining responsive to the other person's input. Reflection serves as both fuel and calibration. Regularly analyze past conversations, noting what sparked engagement, what faltered, and which mental pathways were most effective. Reflection reinforces learning and strengthens the mind's internal framework, making future communication smoother. Over time, the mind becomes attuned to subtle dynamics of dialogue, increasing confidence and reducing the likelihood of hesitation. Reflection ensures that the framework evolves continuously, adapting to new experiences and challenges. Mental rehearsal of transitional phrases is another essential element. These phrases act as connectors that maintain flow and coherence. That reminds me, building on that, or have you ever noticed, when internalized, such bridges allow the mind to navigate shifts in topic effortlessly, sustaining dialogue even when new directions emerge unexpectedly. Transitions reduce cognitive friction and maintain the rhythm of conversation, preventing abrupt silences or disjointed responses. Layered thinking enhances depth. Instead of responding superficially, train the mind to consider multiple dimensions: factual, emotional, philosophical, and practical. Each layer provides a potential avenue for elaboration or follow-up questions. This method ensures that even simple prompts can generate expansive discussion. Layered thinking aligns with the Stoic principle of examining situations from multiple angles, combining observation, analysis, and insight in a manner that strengthens both presence and articulation. The framework also incorporates strategic use of pauses. Thoughtful pauses are not deficits. They are tools for clarity and emphasis. When integrated into the mental structure, pauses create breathing space for ideas to crystallize, demonstrate intentionality, and invite participation from others. The mind can use these moments to select the most effective anchor, scaffold, or associative link, converting what might appear as hesitation into a moment of deliberate reflection. Confidence arises naturally from repeated engagement with this framework. Each successful retrieval, linkage, and expansion reinforces the mind's belief in its capacity to produce relevant dialogue. Mental repetition, rehearsal, and reflective practice collectively train the brain to approach conversation with readiness rather than anxiety. Over time, speaking becomes an effortless function of the mental ecosystem built through disciplined structure, attention, and curiosity. Finally, the mental framework is not static. It evolves through continuous observation, learning, and adaptation. Conversations with diverse individuals, exposure to new environments, and engagement with different ideas expand the network of potential connections and responses. The more varied the input, the richer the mental architecture becomes, providing virtually infinite material to sustain dialogue. Life itself becomes the curriculum, and curiosity, reflection, and structured attention are the tools that convert experience into articulate, confident speech. By integrating compartmentalization, associative linking, scaffolding, scenario rehearsal, curiosity, attention management, cognitive inventorying, adaptive mapping, reflection, transitional phrases, layered thinking, and strategic pauses, the mind develops a resilient infrastructure for conversation. This framework transforms the act of speaking from a task fraught with uncertainty into a habitual, dynamic process. Silence is no longer a threat because the mental machinery is prepared, responsive, and adaptive. Speaking becomes less about performance and more about presence, observation, and interaction, ensuring that dialogue remains fluid, insightful, and continuously generated regardless of circumstance. Number 6. Conversation fuel. You can generate anywhere. Conversation is not something that exists only in meetings, parties, or carefully curated social situations. It is a living, breathing process that can be sparked anywhere, from the corner cafe to the waiting room, from a crowded street to a quiet park bench. The ability to generate conversational fuel anywhere is not about memorizing scripts or rehearsing lines. It is about training the mind to extract potential dialogue from the world itself, to transform ordinary surroundings into abundant sources of insight, questions, and shared reflection. Every location, object, and interaction contains the seeds of communication. It is only a matter of perception and skill to cultivate them. The first step is observational discipline. Life is filled with stimuli, but few are recognized consciously. Developing the habit of acute observation turns even mundane environments into reservoirs of conversational material. Notice textures, colors, shapes, and movements. Listen to background sounds, the cadence of traffic, snippets of dialogue, or the rhythm of footsteps. Recognize patterns in human behavior, whether it is how someone reacts to a barista or the subtle gestures accompanying a conversation across a table. Each detail is a potential spark, and the habit of collecting these mental notes creates a rich database for immediate or future dialogue. Once observations are made, they must be translated into approachable commentary. Seeing is not enough. The key is converting noticing into speech that invites engagement. A passing detail about a mural's intricate design becomes a prompt. That mural is striking. The layers of color almost tell a story. Do you see a narrative in it? By framing observations as invitations to respond, rather than statements of judgment, the mind generates fuel that is interactive, flexible, and enduring. This technique converts environmental awareness into dynamic conversational energy. Another method is contextual questioning. Every object or scenario carries latent stories and connections. Asking questions rooted in context allows for natural dialogue to emerge. The music playing here is unusual. Have you heard anything like it before? Or this cafe has a unique layout. Does it remind you of a place you've visited? These questions are more than conversation starters. They are micro-explorations of perception, memory, and opinion. When practiced consistently, context-based questioning creates a mental reflex that continuously produces relevant talking points regardless of location. Personal reflection amplifies the fuel generated by observation. Integrating small personal insights into dialogue bridges the gap between noticing and engagement. If a passerby exhibits a curious habit, reflecting on a similar memory from your own life creates connection. That person's focus reminds me of when I tried learning calligraphy. It's fascinating how concentration changes perspective. Have you ever had a similar experience? Sharing personal reflections alongside external observations enhances relatability and invites reciprocity, multiplying the amount of conversational material available in any setting. A crucial component is the anticipation of potential responses. While observing and reflecting, mentally consider how others might react or expand upon the topic. This forward thinking allows for immediate follow-up questions or elaborations, sustaining dialogue without pause. Anticipation functions like a mental engine, continuously generating new angles, analogies, or related anecdotes. Each response from another person feeds back into this loop, creating a self-perpetuating system of conversational energy. Imagination works in tandem with observation. When walking past a street scene, imagining the lives, motivations, and experiences of those within it creates fuel that is both creative and empathetic. A family crossing a street might inspire thoughts about travel, parenting, or community dynamics. Imagination bridges the gap between what is seen and what can be asked, ensuring that the mind never exhausts its source of inquiry. This practice transforms ordinary moments into endless storytelling opportunities and exploratory questions. Curiosity is the linchpin in sustaining fuel generation. It is not passive or superficial, but a deliberate practice of asking, exploring, and connecting. The curious mind probes deeper into textures, behaviors, and phenomena, extracting layers of meaning that casual observation misses. Curiosity transforms static environments into interactive landscapes, turning a brief encounter with a stranger into a rich opportunity to learn, connect, and share insight. This approach guarantees that conversation can be generated anywhere, means the world itself becomes a partner in dialogue. Everyday routines can be transformed into training exercises for conversational fuel. While commuting, focus on 3 new details to notice and frame as potential talking points. In lines at stores, observe and imagine stories behind interactions or objects. During walks, note environmental contrasts and pose hypothetical questions internally. These exercises sharpen the mind's ability to convert ordinary stimuli into articulate commentary. Over time, this capacity becomes automatic, and the brain continuously supplies material without conscious effort. Physical engagement with the environment can further enhance conversational fuel. Touch, movement, and embodied interaction provide additional layers of observation. Feeling the texture of a table, noticing the warmth of sunlight, or sensing a breeze can all be translated into dialogue that includes sensory richness. The sunlight on this bench makes the shadows move in an unusual pattern. It's almost meditative. Do you notice similar effects outdoors? Sensory engagement expands the palette of possible topics, ensuring that conversations are multidimensional and immersive. Mental cataloging extends beyond immediate observation. Maintain a running internal log of details, ideas, and reflections that arise during daily life. Periodically revisit these mental notes and integrate them into conversations when appropriate. The catalog does not need to be formal or exhaustive. It is a flexible repository that the mind can access under pressure. This cumulative approach ensures that conversation is not reliant solely on real-time observation, but benefits from previously acquired insights, adding depth and variety to engagement. Timing and pacing of observation are critical. Continuous scanning of the environment without attention to the conversational moment can be distracting or disruptive. Instead, learn to balance noticing with listening and responding. Observation should complement, not compete with, immediate engagement. This balance enables the generation of fuel in real time while maintaining coherent interaction, creating conversations that feel natural and responsive rather than forced. Interpersonal awareness enhances fuel generation. Observing subtle cues, micro-expressions, tone shifts and body language provides insight into the other person's interest, mood and energy level. This information guides which conversational sparks are likely to succeed and which may falter. Being attuned allows for adaptive selection of topics and responses, optimizing the flow of dialogue and sustaining engagement without interruption. Mental flexibility underlies all these strategies. The mind must be able to shift focus, reframe observations and pivot topics effortlessly. Each new observation, question, or reflection becomes a potential link in the chain of dialogue. Flexibility ensures that even unexpected interruptions or deviations from anticipated responses do not halt the flow of conversation. The mind continuously adjusts, synthesizing incoming information and generating relevant fuel for articulation. The overarching principle is that conversation fuel is abundant when the mind is trained to perceive, interpret, and integrate the world actively. Life itself provides infinite sources of observation, reflection, and curiosity. By cultivating habits of attentiveness, sensory engagement, imaginative projection, contextual questioning, personal reflection, anticipatory thinking, and mental cataloging, the mind becomes a self-sustaining generator of dialogue. Conversations become resilient, adaptive, and rich, capable of flowing in any environment, under any circumstances. By embedding these practices into daily life, one no longer waits for ideal conditions or carefully prepared prompts. Every environment, person, and experience becomes a partner in conversation. The ability to generate conversational fuel anywhere is not a skill reserved for extroverts or performers. It is a cultivated mindset, a disciplined awareness, and a practical application of observation, reflection, and curiosity. Over time, this approach transforms communication from a reactive process into a continuous, creative, and fulfilling exchange, where silence is never a barrier and dialogue is always within reach. Number 7. How to speak freely under pressure. Speaking under pressure is an art that begins with mastery over the self rather than the audience. The anxiety that accompanies high-stakes interactions, meetings, interviews, presentations, or even spontaneous conversations originates in the mind's anticipation of judgment and failure. Freedom of speech under these conditions is not about eliminating fear. It is about transforming it into a reliable energy that supports clarity, presence, and authenticity. The key is to develop a mental, emotional, and physical system that allows thought to flow naturally despite external tension. The first layer of this system is cognitive reframing. Pressure often produces a distorted perception of the stakes, magnifying risks while minimizing capacity. By consciously reframing the situation, one shifts focus from fear to opportunity. For instance, instead of viewing an audience as evaluators, perceive them as collaborators, sharing a moment of exchange. Reframing replaces paralysis with engagement, and it does so silently, without external performance. This mental shift lays the foundation for fluid, unforced speech. Breath control serves as a physical anchor for mental clarity. High-pressure scenarios trigger shallow, rapid breathing, which amplifies anxiety and disrupts cognitive function. Training the body to take deliberate, slow breaths signals safety to the nervous system, allowing the mind to regain composure. Simple exercises: inhale for 4 counts, hold for 2, exhale for 6, can be employed instantly. The rhythm of breath acts as a stabilizer, synchronizing thought and speech while tempering the physiological response to stress. Preparation remains essential but requires a nuanced approach. Over-rehearsing exact words can create rigidity, making the speaker vulnerable when deviations occur. Instead, focus on flexible frameworks, key points, core examples, and guiding questions. Think of preparation as designing a map with multiple routes rather than memorizing a single path. When pressure mounts, these frameworks provide direction without restricting natural expression. Familiarity with the content instills confidence, and confidence is the core of free speech under duress. Attention management is another critical skill. Pressure can fragment focus, scattering thoughts across self-consciousness, perceived judgment, and anticipated outcomes. Training attention to reside fully in the present moment, listening actively, observing micro-cues, and responding to the substance of interaction reduces mental clutter. This alignment allows responses to emerge organically rather than being forced. Conscious anchoring in the immediate environment, paired with active engagement, ensures that speech remains coherent and authentic. Micro-recovery strategies safeguard continuity when the mind falters. Brief phrases or reflective statements act as bridges to regain composure. "That's an interesting point. Let me think about it for a moment," or "I'd like to explore that further." These interventions are not evasions. They are tools that maintain dialogue while granting the mind space to formulate thought. Coupled with steady breathing, they prevent temporary hesitation from becoming a complete freeze, allowing speech to resume seamlessly. Visualization is a proactive tool for handling pressure. Mentally rehearsing high-stakes interactions, including potential interruptions or unexpected questions, creates neural familiarity. By imagining both challenges and smooth navigation, the mind internalizes adaptive responses. Visualization should be vivid. Hear the tones, see the setting, and feel the physical sensations. This mental simulation reduces shock during actual events, fostering composure and fluid articulation. Emotional regulation underpins all high-pressure communication. Recognizing physiological and emotional signals, racing heart, tight throat, tension in shoulders, is the first step. Rather than resisting these sensations, accept and integrate them into a deliberate rhythm of thought and speech. Channeling the heightened arousal into expressive energy transforms anxiety into clarity and engagement. Emotional awareness prevents fear from dominating the conversation, allowing expression to remain confident and spontaneous. Anchoring thoughts to core principles enhances stability. Identify a few fundamental points or guiding truths relevant to the conversation. Returning to these anchors when uncertainty arises provides mental grounding. Anchors act as touchstones, enabling improvisation without losing direction. This method ensures continuity of thought and reduces the risk of incoherence when external pressures threaten cognitive flow. Adaptive language techniques support fluid speech. Employ phrases that invite interaction, reflection, and elaboration. "How do you see this?" Or "I've noticed something similar. What's your perspective?" Using interactive language shifts some cognitive load to the listener, encourages dialogue, and provides breathing space for the speaker. Language becomes a tool of collaboration rather than a one-way performance, promoting natural expression even under scrutiny. Curiosity is a stabilizing mindset in pressured conversations. When focus turns toward genuinely understanding the other person or topic, the need to perform diminishes. Questions, observations, and reflections emerge organically from engagement rather than contrived effort. Curiosity transforms pressure into inquiry, converting anxiety into momentum that propels dialogue rather than stalls it. Physical presence reinforces verbal fluidity. Maintaining grounded posture, open gestures, and deliberate movement communicates confidence and stabilizes internal focus. Tension in the body often manifests as verbal hesitancy. Controlled intentional movements align physiological state with mental clarity. Small adjustments, relaxing shoulders, uncrossing arms, making eye contact, signal control to both self and audience, facilitating smoother expression. Incremental exposure to pressure is essential for mastery. Seek progressively challenging conversational contexts, beginning with lower stakes situations and gradually increasing complexity. Each encounter functions as practical training, reinforcing cognitive, emotional and physical strategies. Over time, exposure desensitizes the nervous system to stressors, enabling freer articulation in circumstances that once induced hesitation. This systematic approach builds resilience, making pressure a manageable variable rather than a disruptive force. Reflection and feedback consolidate learning. After high-pressure interactions, review what flowed well, which strategies were effective, and where improvements are possible. Self-analysis coupled with honest assessment strengthens the internal framework for future conversations. Reflection transforms experience into skill, ensuring that each challenge contributes to ongoing refinement of thought and expression. Mental flexibility allows adaptation mid-conversation. Unexpected questions, interruptions, or shifts in tone require immediate adjustment. By cultivating a mindset that embraces uncertainty rather than resists it, the speaker can pivot without losing composure. Flexibility ensures continuity and allows speech to remain fluid, natural, and responsive, even when external pressures fluctuate unpredictably. The combination of cognitive reframing, breath regulation, flexible preparation, focused attention, micro-recovery strategies, visualization, emotional regulation, anchoring, adaptive language, curiosity, physical presence, incremental exposure, reflection, and mental flexibility produces a comprehensive system for speaking freely under pressure. These elements interact, reinforcing each other and creating a robust architecture that supports confidence, clarity, and authenticity. With practice, pressure ceases to paralyze. The mind and body respond as a unified system, translating heightened arousal into articulate speech and dynamic engagement. Conversations that once felt threatening become opportunities for expression, learning, and connection. Freedom in speech is achieved not by eliminating stress, but by mastering the tools that convert it into constructive energy. In any setting, this approach ensures that dialogue remains continuous, coherent, and compelling. High-stakes interactions no longer intimidate because the speaker possesses an internal infrastructure capable of sustaining thought, navigating uncertainty, and generating authentic expression. Speech under pressure transforms from a reactive struggle into a deliberate, confident, and adaptive practice, grounded in preparation, presence, and disciplined awareness. The ability to speak freely under pressure is not a gift, but a cultivated skill, honed through awareness, practice, and reflection. By integrating the techniques outlined, mental reframing, breath, attention, adaptive frameworks, curiosity, and resilience, the mind becomes capable of navigating any conversational landscape with composure and authority. Each conversation, regardless of stakes, becomes an arena to practice mastery, convert stress into clarity, and articulate thoughts with both confidence and authenticity. Number 8. Simple habits that create verbal flow. Verbal flow is a skill that emerges from consistency, awareness, and small but deliberate habits. It is not the product of innate talent. It is cultivated through daily practices that strengthen the mind's ability to articulate thoughts with clarity, rhythm, and confidence. Achieving fluid speech requires aligning mental agility, emotional awareness, and observational skills so that words move naturally from thought to expression without hesitation or artificial construction. The habits that generate this flow are deceptively simple, yet profoundly effective when practiced with intention. The foundation of verbal flow is consistent exposure to rich language. Reading widely and attentively trains the mind to recognize patterns, phrasing, and cadence. Exposure to varied vocabulary, narrative structures, and styles allows the brain to internalize the rhythm and diversity of speech. This habit does not require passive consumption. Active engagement is key. As one reads, pause to note compelling turns of phrase, metaphors, or questions that provoke reflection. These mental notes serve as tools for spontaneous expression, ready to be adapted into conversation. Daily reflection cultivates narrative fluency. Taking a few minutes each day to summarize personal experiences or insights sharpens the mind's ability to translate thought into words. This practice can be silent or written, but the key is habitual analysis of experience. Recounting events, challenges, or observations strengthens the internal mechanisms of organization, sequencing, and emphasis. Over time, this habit trains the mind to structure spontaneous speech naturally, reducing the pauses and fumbling that disrupt verbal flow. Observation is another cornerstone habit. The world provides endless material for conversation, but without careful attention, these opportunities pass unnoticed. Noticing subtle gestures, tonal shifts, environmental cues, or patterns in social behavior generates a continuous stream of conversational fuel. By habitually scanning surroundings and human behavior, the mind acquires a catalog of details that can be transformed into questions, reflections, or anecdotes. Observation paired with curiosity creates a mental reservoir, ensuring that speech can emerge effortlessly in any context. Listening is an equally critical habit. Flowing speech does not mean dominating conversation. It means responding fluidly to input. By cultivating active listening, one trains the mind to interpret, integrate, and expand upon what is said. This requires focus, patience, and attentiveness to nuances in tone, emotion, and content. Active listening strengthens the brain's capacity to process information quickly, allowing immediate and relevant verbal responses, which in turn sustains rhythm and coherence in dialogue. Mindful pausing enhances verbal rhythm. Speech that flows is not constant. It is punctuated by pauses that allow thought to crystallize and words to land with clarity. Practicing brief, deliberate pauses prevents rambling and allows the listener to engage more fully. These pauses are not gaps, but strategic intervals that organize thought and improve articulation. Habitually using them reinforces cognitive control, ensuring that speech emerges smoothly rather than in disjointed bursts. Engaging in regular storytelling exercises develops narrative agility. This does not require formal performance. It can be practiced with oneself or close companions. Recount a minor event in 3 different ways: humorous, reflective, and analytical. Vary emphasis, structure, and pacing. These exercises train adaptability, helping the mind shift seamlessly between tones, topics, and perspectives. As a result, verbal flow becomes multidimensional, capable of responding to diverse social and emotional contexts. Mental rehearsal supports habitual fluency. Before anticipated interactions, briefly visualize key points, possible questions, and narrative threads. This internal practice primes the brain to navigate topics without effort, reducing the cognitive friction that often interrupts speech. Mental rehearsal does not produce rigid scripts, but establishes flexible frameworks that can be deployed dynamically. When combined with observation and reflection, it ensures that verbal flow is sustained even under unpredictable circumstances. Curiosity is a reinforcing habit for generating continuous dialogue. Habitually asking questions, exploring perspectives, and seeking understanding trains the mind to generate content organically. Curiosity-driven inquiry prevents verbal stagnation because it shifts the focus outward, reducing self-conscious hesitation. It produces a natural rhythm of give and take, where questions lead to reflections, which in turn prompt further exploration. This creates an almost self-perpetuating cycle of speech, where thought and expression remain intertwined. Physical and vocal awareness contributes to habitually fluid speech. Observing posture, gesture, and tone ensures that expression is both coherent and resonant. Subtle adjustments, relaxing shoulders, opening the chest, modulating voice pitch, enhance confidence and clarity. When such awareness becomes habitual, speech flows with less conscious effort because the body reinforces mental presence. Habits of embodied engagement anchor verbal expression, allowing thought to move through the body and voice seamlessly. Regular engagement in low-pressure conversational environments strengthens adaptability. Daily interactions with a range of individuals, even brief encounters, serve as practice grounds for verbal flow. Each conversation, no matter how small, reinforces sequencing, timing, and response flexibility. Over time, the brain internalizes conversational rhythms, reducing reliance on conscious construction and enabling natural expression across contexts. Habitual reflection after interactions accelerates skill acquisition. Evaluating what worked, what faltered, and which topics resonated strengthens self-awareness and refines approach. Reflection is not self-criticism, but a method of internal calibration. Identifying patterns in effective speech informs future behavior, ensuring continuous improvement in verbal agility. Over time, these reflective habits compound, producing a mental environment optimized for natural articulation. Integration of associative thinking enhances fluidity. By habitually linking observations, experiences, and insights, the mind generates continuous streams of relevant content. A single remark can trigger multiple related points, which can be expressed sequentially or woven into cohesive narrative threads. This associative network is strengthened through daily practice, noticing patterns, drawing parallels, and imagining connections. Habitually exercising this mental flexibility ensures that speech remains rich, coherent, and expansive. Incorporating these habits into a structured daily routine ensures cumulative effect. Start with reading or listening exercises to expand language, engage in reflection and observation, practice storytelling and mental rehearsal, maintain active curiosity, and conclude with analysis of interactions. Each component reinforces the others, creating an ecosystem that supports continuous verbal flow. Habits function synergistically. Observation informs reflection, which strengthens narrative agility, which primes curiosity, which enhances engagement. Ultimately, verbal flow is less a product of innate talent than a result of disciplined, cumulative habits. It emerges from consistent engagement with language, attention to detail, active listening, reflection, curiosity, and embodied awareness. By committing to these practices, speech becomes an effortless extension of thought, responsive to context, and adaptive to varying emotional and social demands. Habits provide the scaffolding that supports spontaneity, ensuring that words emerge naturally and coherently in any interaction. Through intentional cultivation of these routines, verbal expression transforms from a conscious struggle into an intuitive process. The mind continuously generates, organizes, and articulates ideas, while the body and voice reinforce clarity and presence. Speech becomes rhythmic, flexible, and engaging, sustained by practices that are simple, repeatable, and scalable. These habits create a reliable foundation for verbal flow, allowing dialogue to emerge naturally, confidently, and endlessly, regardless of circumstance. Number 9. Think once, talk effortlessly forever. True fluency in conversation is less about talking constantly and more about thinking strategically. The principle of think once, talk effortlessly forever is rooted in preparation, reflection, and mental organization. It is about creating a mental architecture where a single careful thought, observation, or insight can generate streams of dialogue repeatedly without requiring constant reinvention. This approach does not rely on memorized scripts or rehearsed phrases. It relies on cultivating depth, adaptability, and clarity of thought so that expression becomes natural and continuous. The first step is deep observation. Engaging with the world attentively allows a single moment or insight to provide extensive material. Notice behaviors, patterns, and subtle details in people, environments, and situations. One observation, when examined from multiple angles, emotional, logical, aesthetic, or practical, can generate multiple points of conversation. This habit transforms a simple noticing into a versatile seed for dialogue, ensuring that the mind does not scramble to produce new content under pressure. Reflection amplifies this process. After experiencing an event, interaction, or observation, pause to analyze its components. Consider causes, implications, and personal reactions. A single reflection can be deconstructed into stories, examples, questions, or philosophical insights. By training the mind to unpack and reinterpret a thought from multiple dimensions, one idea becomes an inexhaustible source of verbal material. The effort invested in reflection once generates countless opportunities for future expression. Another key element is the development of mental frameworks. A framework is a flexible structure that allows content to expand and adapt to different conversational contexts. For instance, a principle such as resilience or curiosity can be illustrated through anecdotes, applied to hypothetical scenarios, or connected to cultural observations. When a framework is established, the mind can deploy it in multiple interactions, adjusting examples and emphasis without repeating exactly the same words. One well-structured thought becomes a recurring tool for effortless conversation. Categorization strengthens this capacity. Organizing insights into mental categories, personal experience, social observation, cultural commentary, or philosophical reflection allows rapid access during dialogue. When a conversation arises, the mind can retrieve relevant content from these categories, ensuring coherence and relevance. A single observation may fit into several categories, multiplying its conversational potential. Categorization transforms initial thinking into a scalable resource, reducing cognitive strain and enhancing fluency. Curiosity fuels expansion. A thought is never isolated. By asking questions, probing possibilities, or exploring related themes, a single idea branches into multiple lines of discussion. For example, observing a person's approach to problem solving can lead to questions about work habits, creativity, mindset, and personal growth. Each branch can be explored, compared, or related to personal experience. By habitually cultivating curiosity, the mind continuously converts one initial insight into diverse conversational paths. Memory scaffolding ensures that the mental effort invested in a thought is preserved. Keep mental notes of past reflections, stories, or observations, and revisit them periodically. By reinforcing these connections, the mind creates a repository of reusable material. One fully examined idea can then be employed multiple times, contextualized differently depending on the audience or scenario. This scaffolding guarantees that mental labor invested once continues to yield conversational output indefinitely. Simplifying complexity is critical. A single complex observation or insight can be distilled into core principles or metaphors that are easily communicated and remembered. By reducing the cognitive weight of a thought without losing its depth, it becomes portable and deployable in multiple interactions. The elegance of simplicity allows one idea to generate diverse expressions, while remaining accessible and engaging. Adaptive thinking enhances utility. When engaging with different audiences, the mind can pivot the focus, tone, or application of an insight without recreating it entirely. One observation about teamwork, for example, can be framed as a practical strategy in a professional setting, as a philosophical reflection among friends, or as a personal anecdote in a mentoring context. Adaptation allows a single thought to maintain relevance across multiple circumstances, producing effortless verbal flow. Pattern recognition extends the principle. Observing recurring themes in conversation, behavior, or culture allows one thought to connect with multiple situations. A reflection on discipline might relate to professional challenges, personal habits, or historical examples. Recognizing these patterns converts individual insights into modular components of dialogue, enabling efficient use of mental resources. One observation becomes a node in a network, supporting continuous and versatile speech. Visualization reinforces recall and improvisation. Mentally rehearsing how a thought can be expressed in different ways, anticipating potential questions or reactions, strengthens neural pathways associated with articulation. One idea practiced in this way becomes immediately accessible during real-time conversation. The mind no longer struggles to produce responses because the pathways have already been exercised, allowing smooth, spontaneous delivery. Emotional anchoring supports clarity. When a thought is connected to personal emotion, curiosity, empathy, wonder, or reflection, it gains energy and memorability. Emotion embeds the idea deeply in memory and makes it compelling when shared. One thought tied to feeling can be expressed multiple times in varied contexts, while retaining authenticity and resonance, enhancing the effortless flow of conversation. Iterative reflection consolidates learning. After interactions, analyze which thoughts were effective, how they were adapted, and what generated engagement. This evaluation informs future application and strengthens the mental architecture. The initial investment in thinking once becomes amplified over time, as repeated deployment and refinement increase versatility and ease of use. Metaphorical thinking multiplies utility. A single metaphor derived from a personal experience, cultural observation, or natural phenomenon can be applied in numerous conversations by translating abstract concepts into concrete imagery. One idea can communicate complex meaning efficiently. Metaphors serve as conversational anchors, bridging understanding and prompting further exploration, turning a single reflection into expansive verbal material. Practicing mindfulness preserves the initial clarity of thought. In the noise of daily life, a brilliant observation can be forgotten if not consciously noted and reflected upon. Mindfulness, paying attention to details, internal reactions, and patterns, ensures that one's thinking remains sharp and accessible. The mind learns to capture insights fully, so they are ready for effortless deployment in dialogue. Integration of all these practices ensures that verbal output becomes sustainable and abundant. Observation, reflection, categorization, frameworks, curiosity, scaffolding, simplification, adaptation, pattern recognition, visualization, emotional anchoring, iterative evaluation, metaphorical thinking, and mindfulness converge to create a system where one carefully considered thought can yield endless conversational material. The efficiency of this system allows speaking to feel effortless, because the mental groundwork has been thoroughly established. The principle of think once, talk effortlessly forever is transformative because it turns intellectual investment into perpetual verbal productivity. It reduces the cognitive load associated with improvisation and fear of silence, replacing it with confidence, depth, and adaptability. Speech becomes a natural extension of thought rather than a laborious act, and the mind remains agile, ready to respond creatively and authentically in any situation. Through disciplined observation, structured reflection, and strategic application, one can transform single insights into limitless conversational opportunities. Each thought, once fully processed, becomes a seed capable of producing stories, questions, reflections, and metaphors across diverse contexts. This approach eliminates the constant pressure to generate new ideas on the spot, replacing it with a reliable system that supports ongoing, effortless, and engaging dialogue indefinitely. Number 10. Master spontaneous speech without scripts. Mastering spontaneous speech without scripts is less about improvisation in the moment and more about cultivating an internal structure that supports clarity, creativity, and confidence. The mind must be trained to think, organize, and articulate ideas fluidly, transforming raw observation and instinct into coherent dialogue. Spontaneity does not emerge from randomness. It emerges from preparation of thought, presence of awareness, and disciplined practice of mental flexibility. The foundation of spontaneous speech is deep listening. Paying full attention to words, tone, and body language allows the brain to respond meaningfully rather than mechanically. By observing subtle cues, one can anticipate direction, emotional undercurrents, and conversational gaps. Active listening primes the mind for instant response, providing both content and context for articulate speech. This habit strengthens intuitive thinking, making reactions more natural and coherent. Mental agility is essential for processing and organizing thoughts in real time. Training the mind to categorize ideas such as personal experiences, questions, reflections, or analogies allows rapid selection of relevant material. When a conversational moment arises, these mental categories act as ready-made reservoirs of content, enabling swift and adaptable response. Mental agility is enhanced through exercises like free writing, rapid association drills, or summarizing complex ideas in simple language. Each practice strengthens the brain's capacity to deploy ideas spontaneously. Confidence is both the product and enabler of fluid speech. The fear of being judged often inhibits spontaneity, creating hesitation or fragmented dialogue. Confidence grows through repeated exposure, reflection, and incremental challenges. Engaging in everyday interactions with intention, practicing responses to unpredictable questions, and celebrating small successes reinforce self-assurance. When the mind trusts its ability to articulate meaningfully, speech becomes naturally expressive and unforced. Observation cultivates material for spontaneous dialogue. Everyday life provides an endless array of visual, auditory, and experiential cues. Observing human behavior, environmental patterns, and cultural dynamics equips the mind with examples, analogies, and anecdotes that can be integrated seamlessly into conversation. A single observation, when mentally analyzed for implications and connections, can yield multiple points of articulation, supporting a chain of thought that sustains verbal flow without prior scripting. Curiosity drives spontaneous expansion of dialogue. Questions, explorations, and reflections emerge naturally when the mind is genuinely interested. Rather than forcing content, a curious approach focuses on discovery, prompting continuous engagement. Asking open-ended questions, exploring nuances in conversation, and connecting ideas to personal experience produces dynamic and evolving dialogue. Curiosity transforms passive speech into interactive exploration, making spontaneity effortless. Practice in narrative structuring enhances the ability to speak coherently off the cuff. Storytelling exercises, whether recounting personal anecdotes or interpreting observed events, train the brain to sequence ideas logically, create emphasis, and maintain engagement. Structuring stories in terms of context, challenge, and resolution provides a reliable framework for spontaneous speech. This internal structure allows the speaker to move from one point to the next fluidly, even under unexpected circumstances. Emotional presence anchors articulation. Being attuned to one's internal state and the emotional tone of conversation provides depth and resonance. Spontaneous speech is not merely the exchange of words, but an expression of thought colored by feeling. Awareness of emotion allows one to modulate tone, adjust pacing, and select content that resonates. Emotional presence transforms spontaneity from empty chatter into meaningful and engaging dialogue. Silence, strategically used, enhances spontaneity. Brief pauses allow for reflection, breath, and recalibration without disrupting flow. Silence is not a deficit, it is a tool that creates rhythm, emphasizes points, and provides space for the mind to generate articulate responses. When practiced habitually, these pauses integrate seamlessly into speech, maintaining continuity and clarity even under pressure. Association and analogy enrich spontaneous speech. Linking new ideas to familiar concepts or previously shared knowledge creates coherence and relatability. Analogies help bridge abstract thought with concrete understanding, making off-the-cuff remarks insightful and memorable. Training the mind to spot patterns, similarities, and contrasts strengthens the capacity for real-time synthesis of ideas, enabling rapid articulation without pre-planning. Memory scaffolding supports retrieval of conversational material by mentally cataloging observations, stories, insights, and questions. One creates a personal repository of content that can be drawn upon instantly. Revisiting these mental stores regularly reinforces connections, allowing for immediate access when spontaneity is required. Over time, memory scaffolding reduces cognitive effort, freeing mental energy for articulation and creative expansion rather than retrieval struggle. Adaptability ensures that spontaneous speech remains relevant and engaging. Conversations are unpredictable, and the ability to pivot between topics, adjust tone, and modulate complexity is crucial. Mental flexibility allows the speaker to reframe ideas, connect divergent points, and maintain flow in response to dynamic input. Adaptability turns potential interruptions or unexpected turns into opportunities for richer dialogue. Breath and physical presence influence verbal fluency. Controlled breathing, open posture, and intentional gestures reinforce confidence, rhythm, and clarity. Physiological awareness directly impacts mental performance, anchoring thought and supporting articulation. Physical presence communicates poise, which in turn allows spontaneity to emerge without self-conscious interference. Incremental exposure builds resilience. Regularly engaging in situations where spontaneous speech is required, social interactions, meetings, or casual debates, trains the mind to manage unpredictability. Each experience strengthens neural pathways associated with improvisation, attention, and expression. Over time, spontaneity becomes habitual rather than stressful, with the mind naturally producing coherent dialogue under diverse circumstances. Reflection and self-analysis consolidate skill. After interactions, reviewing what flowed smoothly, where hesitation occurred, and which strategies succeeded, strengthens awareness and informs future practice. Iterative reflection enhances adaptability, reinforces memory scaffolding, and fine-tunes observation and emotional attunement, ensuring that spontaneous speech continues to improve over time. Integration of these elements, listening, mental agility, confidence, observation, curiosity, narrative structure, emotional presence, strategic silence, association, memory scaffolding, adaptability, physical awareness, Incremental exposure and reflection creates a comprehensive system for spontaneous communication. This system transforms the mind into a responsive, resourceful, and articulate engine capable of generating dialogue in real time without reliance on scripts or rigid preparation. The mastery of spontaneous speech is not achieved through luck or innate talent, but through disciplined cultivation of these habits and principles. By embedding them into daily practice, speech becomes a fluid extension of thought, responsive to context, and expressive of insight, curiosity, and emotion. Over time, the speaker learns to navigate any conversational landscape, maintaining clarity, coherence, and engagement regardless of unpredictability. Through consistent application, spontaneous dialogue emerges as effortless, natural, and dynamic. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to exercise presence, observation, and adaptability, producing authentic communication without the crutch of prepared scripts. The mind is prepared, confident, and alert, able to convert thought into articulate expression in real time. Mastery lies in preparation of the mind, not of words, allowing speech to flow freely, creatively, and continuously in every situation.